Survival Fountain of Youth has released a hotfix, although I could really call it just an update to the game. They've tweaked quite a number of things, and one of the ones in there, which I'll talk about first, is one of the things that I was lamenting about in my last episode that I just put up, and that is that now that I've moved to the Buffalo region, I found it very difficult to travel back and forth to be able to use my crafting benches that I'd already set up and that I wanted in the Buffalo region, but I didn't want to have to recreate my entire base. I ended up creating like a tier 1 of everything over on my new base, but you are meant to be able to dismantle all of your crafting stations and get all of the resources back so that you can move from one place to another. They actually posted this set of patch notes up on Twitter. I responded and they confirmed that that was what is intended to happen. So when I jump back into the game, I'm probably going to sail back to the bird region. I'm going to dismantle my entire base and bring it over into the Buffalo region. However, one of the main bug fixes that they've actually put in may or may not prevent me from doing some of that, which is specifically there are problems with demolishing the actual base itself. Not so much the crafting stations, but the base itself. I've actually got spots on my base where it seems to have attachment points to different structural components, and it says that you can't actually remove a piece because something else is supporting it. And when it's actually doing some kind of a check on multiple different directions, and as a result it will not let me remove any of the pieces, and as a result I can't demo my building. Now maybe some of that's actually been fixed, if they're saying that basically they fixed some of the construction demolition, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to pull down the house, because that way I can bring all of my stuff over to the Buffalo region and recreate what it is that I want over there, and have all of my tier 2 construction, maybe even push it to some tier 3 construction depending on the resources that I find. Other major bug fixes is that this one I haven't actually experienced, is when you go to another region, the animals don't necessarily respawn in the last region you're in, despite the time progressing. So that's actually a fair bug that needs to be fixed, but I haven't actually experienced it because I haven't actually gone back to see. And probably the next one in the list, which is apparently some of the timings stop when you reach over 60 days in game, and I'm in like day 90 I think in the game itself, so I'm actually well and truly past that, but I haven't really noticed that the timings are stopped. The only thing that I've noticed is that when I'm traveling back and forth from the bird to the Buffalo region, it says that it takes 10 hours and your food and your water react as if it's taken 10 hours. However, the daytime progression and all of your statuses don't change based on that, and that potentially is what they're actually saying with the timing stopping. And so that, yeah, it'd be nice to see if that's actually fixed, but I'm also hoping that I won't need to do too much back and forward between the regions anymore based on those fixes. Now, there are quite a lot of fixes in here from there. They all kind of get to little small things where it's, blueprints that you place down to fill out not turning up. Some of the things that you might kill might give 2 of something when it should only give 1, like the jackals giving 2 head trophies. And things like that. I think the tortoise apparently was sometimes giving 2 shells, where it should only give 1. And so it's little bits and pieces like that. Some of the stuff around cartographer towers not adding enough advantage to the mapping, and so on and so forth. So if you're interested in seeing the full list of patches outside of a couple of those major ones, make sure you check out the full list on Steam. But we're going to move on to the next part of things, where we start looking at the balance improvements and other tweaks. With the balance improvements, this has actually got quite a number of things in here that I was also having a big gripe about during my episodes. I think I'm like episode 6 at the moment that's out, so I've actually been playing for a little bit now, but I had it with the cattails. And so the time it would take to gather cattails and rocks, even for that matter, just the small rocks, you would spend half an hour grabbing a handful of flowers or a handful of rocks. And so when you needed to collect quite a significant number of these things, rocks specifically because you need tons of them, and cattails are great for fire starters, you spend all day just picking these things, but then you'd go and find some other resource that would take 5 minutes, and you're just scratching your head going, why does that take longer than picking a couple of flowers? And so they've modified a few timers there, and so hopefully that will relate to a much better experience. They've increased the number of basic resources with nodes for small sticks, small stones, massive stones, and obsidian. That sounds wonderful, but at the same time I really think that the basic resources like small sticks and small stones, they should essentially be unlimited. You know, the small sticks and small stones, you should just find them anywhere. Now I understand that massive stones, and very specifically obsidian, you don't want to have them as an unlimited resource, but at least for those small stones and small sticks, you know, create the piles where they live should regenerate at a ridiculous rate. Or you just let people freely pick them up. They shouldn't be something that's difficult to find. You may need to just travel somewhere so that you can pick them up, but they should just always be there. That's how I feel about it. They have increased the regeneration speed of a number of resource nodes, including copper. They don't really specify which nodes, but hopefully all the nodes, because some of them were taking 30 days to recover, but it would only recover one item in 30 days. And so when you need something like broad leaves, and those things regenerate one leaf every 30 days, when you actually want the entire plant to regenerate in 30 days, it'll be interesting to see whether that one's actually been updated in that way, or whether it's what kind of a tweak we're really talking about. They say for the next one that they've tweaked the crafting times for a number of resources and food and house modules. This is probably actually a good example, right? So you can build the foundation for a house, and I think it takes 15 minutes in game, but to pick 3 cattails would take you half an hour. And so that there is probably the best example that I can give of where the timings didn't even make sense. Pick 3 flowers, take half an hour, build the structural component of a house, 15 minutes, you're all good. But that being said, I would like the house building to be a little bit better and cleaner. So I think it was actually placing the resources was the issue there. You would place the blueprint, you would interact with the blueprint to add the resources. After adding the resources, you would then activate the fact that you needed to craft it. And so there was a 3-stage process to put down one single part of your base. And it would be nice to see if that one changes too, but that one will probably may not change based on the engine that they've actually built for the game. The next one, initial water in the natives' water storage has been increased. I haven't even found the natives yet, so that one doesn't really affect me, but people may be interested in it. And the last point under balance improvements is that the cartography is now faster. And I'm going to be very interested in my next episode, episode 10, to actually give that a go, because the mapping time, initially it was like 3 hours, and then once you get better mapping tools, it was an hour to an hour and a half. If that comes down a lot, that will be fantastic. And so I'll be very interested to see how long that now takes, as mapping something was also a whole day experience where you would basically get to where you wanted to go, find the tree or find the highest point, do your mapping, and then go back home and have a rest because it was now dark. They have a section in here labelled onboarding improvements. Now I take this to actually mean the initial part of the story where you're learning how, well, kind of like the tutorial, learning how to actually play the game. They've added a 3rd pile of stones in range of the first cartographer tree. They've moved 1 stone deposit within range of the cartographer tree. They've added a broken rainwater collector near the grotto. That actually sounds really good, actually having that resource there that you could actually disassemble and utilise. And they've improved the quests on the Island of Hope, so that you find the rope near the ship. Now I already knew where the rope was, but actually adding that as a part of the quest is actually a really good step. And they added a step for waiting until dark to find the spyglass. That makes so much more sense. I didn't have an issue with it because I was over in that area close to dark and I saw the fireflies, but the quest notes that he lost the spyglass when there was fireflies, and so if you didn't actually go there during the dark, you wouldn't be able to find it, really. And they added a quest to find obsidian. Well, that's actually really kind of good too. I naturally found it because I explored the entire island and I found obsidian for myself. For the last part, we're looking at the other tweaks. There's a couple of nice reading items in here. They've reduced the block response time. Now, I noticed this one is basically when you, or I think I noticed this one, when you block, the animation of the block stays in the blocked position for quite some time before returning to normal. And they've reduced the block response time, which I assume is particularly that one. But they're saying that they may be actually making some serious changes to the combat system in general, which sounds actually quite good, because in general speaking, you pretty much just have attack and block, and obviously with the bow you're shooting. I haven't actually got the firearm, so I haven't even used any of that sort of stuff yet. But yeah, if they can add more elements to the combat system, it certainly won't hurt. They've made access to the catamaran boxes a bit easier. And when we say catamaran, is that a place that you find, or do we actually make a catamaran? That was part of my lamenting of travelling between regions and having to dismantle and rebuild crafting stations. Having a bigger boat where I can put all of my crafting stations on the boat like a catamaran, I would love that. So he's hoping that a catamaran does exist and I can have a floating base. They put several fixes where the character could get stuck. I haven't actually found a spot where I can get stuck. I've been a bit lucky about that one, I guess. They changed the location of the cartographer trees on Copper Island so that all nodes can be mapped easily. Well, that's rather unfortunate, seeing as I've already used all 3 trees on Copper Island. And it sounds like I'm going to have to do them again. They've added hydration forecast for drinking from flasks. Hydration forecast. That's interesting. Obviously, there's a flask in the game. No, I think they called them flasks. I've got the bamboo flask. Unless it's a bamboo bandolier, or whatever they call it. No, the bandolier is the arrows. So, I'll have to check that out, see what the hydration forecast really is. I may not actually have the flask related to the hydration forecast yet. And then obligatory with various visual improvements and minor performance fixes, which doesn't actually list what those are. Anyway, I felt like doing this update mainly because there's a number of things that I'd actually been griping about over the last 6 episodes that I've been doing of Survival Fountain of Youth, and they seem to be addressing quite a number of those which I had problems with. And so, at least in the very next episode, hopefully we'll catch you all there, we'll see whether or not those things impact the gameplay that I'm having. Anyway, thanks for listening in, and I will catch you in the next one.